Welcome back in. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head along with you on your Friday morning, getting you set for South Carolina women's basketball in the Sweet 16 coming up later on today. Again, tip-off at 5 o'clock. Pregame coverage starting on our sister station, 98.5 WOMG at 4:30. To get more insight into the opponent that is the Indiana Hoosiers women's basketball team, now welcome in on the Love Chevrolet phone lines, Jack Anknoy from Hoosiers Now. Jack, first of all, appreciate a little bit of your time this morning to help us get some insight into the Hoosiers. First off, I mean, what's kind of the mood and sentiment around the program and the fan base as, you know, being the big underdog going up against a team in South Carolina that is been undefeated up to this point, that everyone, you know, as maybe a lot of people have already penciled in and being in the Final Four in the national championship. What's the vibe of Indiana kind of being overlooked in this game?
Hey, Tyler. Well, thanks for having me on, first of all. And, yeah, you're right. IU knows they're the underdog, and they're kind of approaching it with that mentality. You know, I thought something that Terry Morin, Indiana's coach, said that stood out yesterday was, you know, she said, I don't know that anybody believes South Carolina can be beat. And so they're kind of approaching it with, you know, we have nothing to lose. It's kind of playing with house money type of thing. And I think that's very different than how they approached the last few games because, you know, if you go all the way back to last season, Indiana was a number 1 seed and they got upset at home in the round of 32. And, you know, that was a devastating loss. And they brought back most of the team, but did lose a few key players. So it felt like a lot of this season was kind of building up to, can they get past that point and kind of, you know, lift the burden of some of that loss off their shoulders. And you kind of felt them maybe exhale a little bit, I think, after beating Oklahoma in the round of 32 this season. So I think it's a total shift in mentality. I don't think, you know, many people expect Indiana to win this game. South Carolina's favored by 15. So it's definitely a different vibe, but, you know, maybe it helps Indiana play a little bit more loose. You know, you could spin it that way, but certainly a really difficult challenge.
That being said, this is an Indiana team that right out a month ago did beat Caitlin Clark in Iowa after having lost to them a little bit earlier on in the season. What was different about that second matchup between the Hoosiers and the Hawkeyes?
Yeah, I thought they did a really good job of making every shot difficult for Caitlin. You know, they obviously always, you know, the primary defender, you know, was sticking really hard on her, and then they'd bring double teams, triple teams, kind of hard hedge the ball screens and things like that. So they really didn't give her much space at all. And, you know, that was different from the first matchup when she really burned them. I think she still ended up with 20-plus points in the second matchup against Indiana, but she shot, I want to say something like 7 for 24. So I'm not saying that's exactly right, but it was well below 50% in the second matchup, and that was kind of the key. And then I think with Iowa, too, you have to do a better job on their supporting cast, which they did not do in the first game, but they were able to definitely limit some of the other pieces in that second matchup.
Again, talking to Jack Anknoy from Hoosiers Now about Indiana women's basketball. Both these teams, Indiana and South Carolina, come in as the best statistical defenses in their respective conferences, and both like to play at a physical style. How can Indiana match South Carolina's physicality in this game?
Yeah, I think something that stands out when you watch Indiana is just how connected they are and kind of the team chemistry aspect of it. You know, they return not all 5 starters, but they return 4 starters, and the 5th starter was someone that was on the team that played a lot last year. So, you know, it's a veteran team that's played together, and so you can kind of tell that they're all in sync. And I think that starts with some of their guards out front, like Chloe Moore McNeil. Their point guard is a really stingy defender on the ball, and you know, players like Sarah Scalia, Sydney Parrish, you know, they're always kind of diving after loose balls. And then Mackenzie Holmes inside, I think, has really upped her game in the NCAA tournament. I think Indiana had 10 blocks in the first game against Fairfield, and she had a few more against Holmes did individually, had a few more against Oklahoma. So I think it's a team that's connected. I think they have a good kind of point of attack defender with Moore McNeil, and then Holmes is certainly a capable shot blocker inside.
And Mackenzie Holmes, who's been on this team for a while now, she was actually on that team that beat South Carolina all the way back in 2019. Yeah. She's going to have the task of matching up with Camila Cardoso today, about a 4-inch height difference. And I was looking through the opponents that Indiana's played this season. I can't find anybody necessarily that was that much taller than Mackenzie Holmes. Is there anybody that comes to your mind as far as a comp of Camila Cardoso, and how is she going to deal with that size difference?
Yeah, as far as a comparison, I'd have to think about it. But I think that is the matchup that's really tough for Indiana, because Mackenzie Holmes, really dating back, not as much as her freshman year when they played South Carolina, but really the last 4 years, she's been such a reliable player for Indiana to just get the ball inside to, and you can trust she can make a move on just about any defender and have a pretty good chance of scoring around the rim. She's shooting over 60% from the field this season, super efficient, averaging about 20 points. But you're right, Cardoso with the height advantage, that's going to be a huge challenge for Mackenzie. And I think the other thing that's tough about that is, some teams will double team Mackenzie, and then that opens up Indiana's three-point shooters. And Indiana's, they've led the country in three-point percentage for most of the season at around 40%. I don't know if South Carolina will double her as much because Cardoso is such a good defender. So that would maybe allow South Carolina to kind of stick on Indiana's shooters more. So I think not even just individually, but I think if Cardoso can handle Holmes one-on-one, then that makes everything else, so much more difficult for Indiana, because the shooters might not be as open as they have been in past matchups when, kind of guards are digging down on Mackenzie and things like that.
Speaking of those shooters, Scalia and Garzon are two of the best three-point shooters in all of the Big Ten. How are they going to be able to get some open looks today?
Yeah, well, I mean, kind of going back to my last point, a lot of it is when Indiana can get the ball inside to Holmes and kick it out. But I think another thing is we'll look to see if Indiana can kind of push the pace in this one. I think Chloe Moore McNeil, Indiana's point guard, you can kind of tell a lot of games she wants to get it and go. And if Indiana can get some quick three-point looks in transition with Scalia and Garzon before South Carolina's defense gets set, I think that could maybe be something to look for early in the game. Because I don't think, kind of like I mentioned, I don't think it'll be as reliable to kind of do the pass it inside to Holmes, kick it out if South Carolina doesn't double. So it'll be a tough matchup. Scalia can also create, and Yarden can create shots on their own. So it's not like they need, wide open shots. They're pretty shifty too. And Garzon has good height at about 6'3". So, Indiana will certainly need to hit a fair amount of threes to be in this game.
Again, talking to Jack Anknoy from Hoosiers Now. Last one for you here. Obviously, Terry Morin has been at the helm for Indiana for right at a decade now, including being South Carolina right at 5 years ago. No stranger to making good runs in the NCAA tournament. How do you rate her as a tournament coach?
Yeah, I mean, well, so this is Indiana's third Sweet 16 in the last 4 seasons, and that's the only 3 NCAA tournament, the only 3 Sweet 16s Indiana has made in program history on the women's side. So from a program standard, she's at the top. And, Indiana made the Elite Eight in 2021, one game away from the Final Four. I think last year, that home loss to Miami really stung and kind of put a black mark on some of what she's done. But I think in the big picture, 26-5, 4 years in a row that they've been a top 4 seed. She's done a great job with the program. And I think in women's college basketball, it's like when you can make the Sweet 16 and, maybe losing in the Sweet 16 is not what you want, but, you're going up against a team like South Carolina who's really difficult to defeat. That's kind of, just a tough draw. I think if maybe Indiana could have made it further if had they been in a different region. Obviously, you can't control that, but I think Martin's done a great job the last 4 seasons building this up and building a high floor too is important. Indiana has lost great players like Grace Berger, who's in the WNBA now, Ellie Patberg, a fair amount of others. And they haven't had any sort of drop off in the last 4 seasons. So that's a testament to the great program that Martin has built.
Well, it should be a fun matchup. Certainly looking forward to it, and I appreciate a little bit of your time this morning giving us insight into the Hoosiers, Jack.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for having me, Tyler.
Absolutely. Again, Jack Anknoy from Hoosiers Now. Again, tip-off today. Coming up at 5 o'clock, you'll be able to listen to it on our sister station, 98.5 WOMG. Pregame coverage starting at 4:30. We'll come back, wrap up hour number 1 of the Extra Point. Braves baseball in action. It is their opening day after being delayed today. We'll hit that coming up. It is the Extra Point.